Now this is going to ruffle some feathers, isn't it? Let's talk today about an article published on Boston Hockey Now the other day, going over the Boston Bruins and a player they want from the Ottawa Senators. He's a guy who, at the time of recording this audio, is in a pretty precarious spot, because he currently, at the time of me speaking into this microphone, does not have a contract. He will probably sign sometime soon. I'm just kind of assuming here. If it's with the Ottawa Senators, if it's with some other team, who really knows? I am pre-recording this audio, so if this video gets public on YouTube and there already is a deal made before the video is available, then okay, I'm sorry for pre-recording videos and the information within it being invalidated just shortly after, but right now, the guy doesn't have a contract. We are talking, of course, about Shane Pinto, 22-year-old center, 6'2", 192 pounds, right-handed guy, drafted by the Sens in the second round of 2019. Pinto made himself known as a very legit prospect immediately after being drafted, as he became one of the best face-off guys in the NCAA, while also developing some great offensive skill. He had a two-way sense to his game, which made him a very valuable center for the Nodak Fighting Sioux, and shortly after made his debut with the Ottawa Senators. Now, he spent the entire 21-22 year recovering pretty much, so he wasn't available then, but in this previous year, 22-23, Shane Pinto had 35 points in 82 games played and 20 goals as well. Definitely not bad for a 22-year-old who is really coming off of a season where he had no development time whatsoever. But Pinto does need a contract, and if you head over to this article on Bruins Hockey Now, or excuse me, Boston Hockey Now, Jimmy Murphy has the scoop right here. The Boston Bruins, if they do want Shane Pinto, the price will be high. Now, where exactly is this coming from? What do the Bruins have to do with Shane Pinto? Well, according to a trusted NHL source, NHL teams are inquiring about the cost of the 22-year-old pivot on the NHL trade market. This source told Boston Hockey Now that teams have been starting to wonder what Pierre's going to do there. I would expect the Bruins to be one of those teams, given their present and future center situation. Now, that's not a difficult idea to grasp. The Bruins just lost out on Bergeron, they lost out on Krejci, they didn't trade these guys away. No, they lost them to old age. So now the Boston Bruins, having Charlie Coyle and Pavel Zacha as their main guys, with very little prospects to boot, they kinda need to get some immediate and long-term help at sea. So going after whatever centers are available in the market, we had seen the conversations about guys like JT Miller, we had seen Elias Lindholm pop in there, Mark Scheifele as well. Could Shane Pinto be one of those names, especially if he's available, quote-unquote, on the market? The NHL trade speculation increased after a Monday report from Bruce Garriock in the Ottawa Sun said the Senators, Shane Pinto and his agent, have a significant gap to bridge in their contract talks for the RFA center. Here's the quote from Garriock: "Whether Pinto, 22, will be signed before the club's annual charity golf tournament on September 19th remains anybody's guess. GM Pierre Dorion has held talks with his New York-based agent Louis Gross, but they haven't led to a contract. The sense is the two sides have a significant gap to bridge. Both sides want to get something done, so Pinto is in camp, but the reality is he doesn't have a lot of leverage, and it's important for him to be there when players report for medical." Now, this is the interesting part about this entire piece here on Boston Hockey Now. By the way, link is going to be in the description if you want to read more about this yourself. According to the aforementioned source that gave Boston Hockey Now this information, the Sens would be willing to listen to NHL trade offers for the former Nodak star and Franklin Square, New York native, because they believe that 21-year-old prospect and 2020 first-round pick Ridley Gregg, who was also in their system, could be as good or better than Pinto. However, the NHL trade cost will be high, and if the Bruins want Pinto, that could mean parting ways with top prospects Fabian Lysell and Johnny Beecher. Now pause. Firstly, this paragraph is like one really long sentence and another shorter sentence, but essentially the idea here is that the Ottawa Senators would be okay to listen to Shane Pinto trade offers because Ridley Gregg, they believe, is going to be as good, if not better, than Pinto. Now, I'm not going to go out there and immediately agree or disagree. I think they actually play really different styles of games. Like, Gregg, to me, is a lot more of a pest who really works hard and has a lot more of that kind of nastiness to the way he interacts with opponents. There's a sort of snarl that Ridley Gregg has that I don't really know is there in Pinto. And if you wanted to talk about guys who exhibit sort of that high-intensity, work ethic type of game, one of the players that is actually talked about as a potential trade return in a Shane Pinto trade is Fabian Lysell, Boston Bruins guy. I saw a lot of him here in Vancouver because he played for the Vancouver Giants, but Lysell, when he was in the Swedish scene, he had a lot of those similar traits that Ridley Gregg had. Super hard motor, one of the top skaters in the draft, pretty much because his legs would never stop moving, and a guy who really likes to get under his opponent's skin. You could even see the Why I Want video we made about Fabian Lysell back in, when the hell was he drafted? 2021, that's when it was, right? We called him the Swedish Roadrunner because he's just got that style. He also played pretty well with the AHL's Providence Bruins this previous year, getting 37 points in 54 games played. To me, Fabian Lysell is still one of these guys who, if he pans out, he could become some sort of a middle to top six penalty-killing buzzsaw type guy who gives you 30 to 40 points a season. If he gets you 20 goals and 20 assists, you're happy because the way that Lysell is able to impact the game goes a lot further beyond the score sheet and the goals and assists. He just has such a strong game, and he makes everybody around him want to play stronger that there's a really good quality here that I think the Ottawa Senators could capitalize on. And if you have a guy like Lysell playing with somebody like Ridley Gregg, that is just pedal to the metal all the way jacked up to 120%, because these guys could feed off of each other's energy. You know, you do the, what is the thing from Dragon Ball? Yeah, I never really watched that show. I'm sorry. But then you have yourselves Johnny Beecher, who is also discussed as a potential addition in this type of a trade. Beecher is one of the few legitimately talented center prospects that the Boston Bruins have. He was initially a 2019 first-round pick, and he played with the Michigan Wolverines for a few years. Now, he wasn't too amazing at producing points, but last year in the Providence Bruins system in the AHL, he had 23 points in 61 games. Definitely not bad for a 6'3", 209 big power forward brute of a center. This is a guy who, if he really pans out, he could be more so of a bottom six type of guy, more a penalty killer, and really safe bet for the rounding out parts of your lineup rather than a mainstay contributor who is always scoring points or whatever. But realistically, if you wanted to talk about these two guys, Lysell and Beecher, as a return for Pinto, if you're not able to actually get something done with Pinto, and you're sort of feeling that you have other prospects that would fill the role that Pinto has on this team in your system, then if Pierre Dorion decides to trade him away, then okay, I mean, this package is not a terrible one. Like, if you twisted my arm, I honestly could see the value in getting Lysell and Beecher for Pinto. But of course, that's just me. If there are any Boston Bruins fans who are in this video's watch time, then hey, let me know in the comments, what are your opinions about your prospects here? Lysell, Beecher, what are your thoughts on how they've developed in Providence, because they did spend the past season together on that team? What are your thoughts about how they're going to go in the future, and would you trade these guys away for a guy like Shane Pinto, who could become a very solid NHL center who could produce a lot more than the 20 goals he had had this previous year? There's a lot of value here in Pinto, but if there just isn't a deal that the Sens could make out here, then what is the trade price that you'd feel comfortable with? Is it Beecher and Lysell? Do you want to kind of touch on another prospect instead? Do you have any picks that you'd think would be valuable in this type of situation? And if you're a Senators fan, what are your thoughts on the idea of the Sens listening to offers on Pinto, and whether or not this Boston idea is one that means something to you? Would you like Lysell and, let's say, Ridley Gregg playing together on a super amped up energy line that could also produce a bunch of points? Does that and John Beecher rounding out the bottom of the lineup sound like an appropriate return for Shane Pinto? Do you think Ridley Gregg is going to be as good as he's going to be to challenge Pinto and actually replace him? What are your thoughts on this entire idea? The article is going to be linked in the description. I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.